Imagine a scene that often baffles the uninitiated Western traveler. A packed Tokyo subway car during rush hour, a space where physical boundaries vanish and the collective silence is almost tangible. In this high-pressure environment, a toddler begins to show the telltale signs of a looming meltdown: the flushed face, the trembling lip, the sharp intake of breath. In London, New York, or Paris, this moment would likely trigger a predictable sequence of events: a desperate parent bargaining with fruit snacks, a sharp, hushed command to "stop it, right now," or perhaps an embarrassed retreat from the carriage at the next stop. But in Japan, the response is often strikingly different. The mother might simply lean in, offer a quiet word, or perhaps do nothing at all but maintain a calm, steady presence. There is no power struggle, no escalating tension, and miraculously, the child often settles back into a state of quiet observation. This phenomenon is not the result of some innate, genetic stoicism, nor is it the product of a Victorian-style, seen but not heard authoritarianism. Instead, it is the visible tip of a deep psychological iceberg, a parenting philosophy honed over centuries that prioritizes the internal state of the child over the external enforcement of rules. To understand how Japanese children become some of the most self-disciplined and emotionally regulated individuals on the planet, we must first dismantle our Western assumptions about what discipline actually looks like. In the West, we often view parenting as a series of transactions and corrections. We wait for the bad behavior to occur and then deploy a consequence to suppress it. This is a reactive model, a constant game of putting out fires. The Japanese approach, however, is profoundly proactive. It is built on a foundation so sturdy that the fires of behavioral rebellion rarely have the oxygen to burn. This foundation begins with a concept that is often misunderstood by outsiders: the principle of Amae. Amae, a word with no direct equivalent in English, describes the uniquely Japanese sense of being able to depend on another person's love, to be indulged, and to be cared for in a way that is almost symbiotic. In the earliest years of a child's life, Japanese parenting is characterized by an intensity of closeness that many Western observers might mistake for spoiling. For the first several years, the Japanese child is rarely separated from the primary caregiver, usually the mother. They sleep in the same bed, co-sleeping. They are carried frequently, the culture of skinship, and their needs are often anticipated before they are even voiced. While Western parenting often emphasizes early independence, encouraging babies to sleep in their own rooms and self-soothe, Japanese parents view this early period as a time to build an unbreakable reservoir of security. From a neurobiological perspective, this approach is genius. When a child's nervous system is constantly co-regulated by a calm, attentive caregiver, they develop a profound capacity for emotional resilience because they never have to fight for attention or fear the withdrawal of love. They do not develop the anxious or avoidant attachment styles that often lead to behavioral outbursts later in life. In this world of Amae, the child and parent are seen as two halves of a whole. This deep, secure attachment is the soil in which the seeds of discipline will eventually grow. Without this soil, any attempt at discipline is merely an external pressure. With it, discipline becomes an internal desire to remain in harmony with the person who provides such total safety. As the child grows, this indulgence gradually shifts into the practice of shitsuke. While Westerners might translate this simply as discipline, the etymology of the word reveals its true intent. Written with characters that mean to attach beauty to the body, shitsuke is not about punishment or control. It is about the aesthetic and moral refinement of the self. It is the art of raising a child who wants to behave well because they see the beauty and the social utility in doing so. This transition from the total indulgence of Amae to the social responsibility of shitsuke is handled with a remarkable lack of friction. The parent does not suddenly become a drill sergeant. Instead, they become a master of Mimamoru, a term that means to watch over and protect while resisting the urge to intervene. This is the second pillar of the philosophy. It is the belief that children grow stronger when adults allow them to experience productive struggle. On that Tokyo train, the mother's calm isn't a sign of neglect. It is an act of trust. She is observing her child, giving them the space to navigate their own frustration, and stepping in only when absolutely necessary. She is teaching the child that they are capable of handling discomfort. In the West, we often rush in to fix our children's problems because we cannot stand to see them struggle, but in doing so, we accidentally send the message that they are incompetent. The Japanese parent, grounded in the security of the early years, can afford to step back. They know that the child's desire to remain in the circle of harmony with their family is a more powerful motivator than any timeout or revoked privilege could ever be. By the time a Japanese child enters school, they are not behaving because they fear a ruler or a reprimand. They are behaving because their identity has been shaped by a deep sense of belonging and a profound respect for the beauty of communal order. This is the starting point of a journey that transforms a small, dependent infant into a resilient, self-governing member of society. A transformation that happens not through force, but through the quiet, steady application of connection and trust. As the child moves beyond the intimate, protective cocoon of the home and begins to navigate the wider world of the yochien, preschool, and the community, the internal security of Amae begins to transform into a sophisticated social intelligence known as omoyari. This marks the transition into the second major pillar of the Japanese parenting philosophy, the cultivation of an altruistic sensitivity to the collective. In many Western cultures, discipline is framed as a matter of individual accountability and adherence to abstract rules. Do not hit because it is against the rules, or you are in trouble because you disobeyed me. This creates a legalistic relationship between the child and authority. In Japan, however, discipline is profoundly relational and centered on the concept of wa, or social harmony. When a Japanese child misbehaves or causes a disturbance, the adult's response is rarely a lecture on rules. Instead, it is a gentle redirection toward the feelings of others. A mother might say, "Look at the clerk's face. Your shouting is making them feel sad." Or, "If you take all the toys, how will your friend feel?" This constant focus on omoyari shifts the child's motivation from a fear of punishment to a desire for connection and a dread of causing disharmony. The child begins to see themselves not as an isolated ego struggling against external constraints, but as a vital thread in a delicate social fabric. This is where the true power of Japanese self-discipline lies. It is not forced from the top down. It is nurtured from the inside out through an acute awareness of one's impact on the environment. This social awareness is reinforced through what could be called the pedagogy of the mundane, the belief that character is built not through grand moral lessons, but through the quiet, rhythmic repetition of daily rituals. This is why, in Japanese schools and homes, children as young as 3 or 4 are given meaningful responsibilities that would often be considered chores in the West. They are taught to arrange their shoes perfectly at the entrance, to serve tea to guests, to clean their own classrooms, and to prepare communal meals. To a Western observer, this might look like an emphasis on neatness or obedience, but its purpose is far deeper. Each time a child repeats these small, pro-social acts, they are practicing their identity. In Western psychology, we often attempt to change a child's behavior by changing their mind. We explain why they should be responsible, and hope they listen. The Japanese approach reverses this. They believe that behavior precedes belief. By physically performing the actions of a responsible, caring, and disciplined person every single day, the child eventually becomes that person. The identity is built into the muscles and the nervous system through the beauty of the body in motion, the literal meaning of shitsuke. These rituals serve as a form of scaffolding for the child's developing self-regulation. When the environment is structured and the expectations are consistent, the child does not have to expend precious emotional energy deciding how to act. The ritual carries them. Furthermore, this phase of development highlights a crucial distinction in how Japanese parents perceive bad behavior. In the West, we often view a tantrum or a refusal to cooperate as a moral failing or a direct challenge to authority, a battle of wills that must be won. The Japanese parent, grounded in the patience of Mimamoru, views these moments as a skill gap. They recognize that emotional regulation, patience, and the ability to delay gratification are physiological developmental milestones, much like learning to walk or talk. You would never punish a toddler for falling down while they are learning to balance. You would simply realize they haven't mastered the skill yet. Similarly, when a Japanese child loses control, the parent doesn't see a bad kid. They see a child whose internal wiring for self-regulation is still under construction. This perspective removes the shame, the heat, and the ego from the interaction. Instead of asking, "How do I stop this behavior?" the question becomes, "What skill is my child missing right now, and how can I help them practice it?" By approaching misbehavior as a learning opportunity rather than a transgression, the parent remains the child's constant ally rather than their adversary. This preservation of the emotional bond, even in moments of friction, ensures that the child's primary drive remains the desire to stay in harmony with the parent and the group. As the child masters these daily rituals and internalizes the feelings of others, they begin to take genuine pride in their autonomy. This is not the false confidence that comes from constant praise, but the true confidence that comes from actual competence, from knowing that they are a contributing, capable member of the Wa. By the time they reach middle childhood, the discipline has become invisible. It is no longer something done to them, but something they do for themselves and for the world around them. This seamless integration of the self into the collective creates a foundation of resilience that will serve them for a lifetime, allowing them to navigate even the most crowded and stressful environments with a quiet, internal grace. As the child enters the threshold of adolescence and eventually moves toward adulthood, the disparate threads of Amae, Shitsuke, and Mimamoru weave together into a resilient internal armor that defines the mature Japanese character. This final stage of the parenting journey is where the invisible nature of the discipline becomes most apparent, manifesting as two powerful cultural and psychological traits, gaman and enryo. Gaman is often translated as endurance or patience, but in the context of upbringing, it represents the hard-won ability to persist through discomfort, boredom, or emotional distress without losing one's composure. It is the direct fruit of the Mimamoru approach practiced years earlier, because the child was allowed to experience productive struggle in their youth, sitting in the discomfort of a broken toy or a difficult homework assignment without an adult rushing in to fix it. They have developed a high threshold for frustration. They do not see a challenge as a reason to quit or a sign of personal inadequacy. They see it as a temporary state that can be managed through steady, internal effort. This is the bedrock of the emotional resilience that allows Japanese society to function so smoothly, even under intense pressure. Complementing this is enryo, a form of self-restraint and modesty that guides how an individual takes up space in the world. It is the sophisticated evolution of omoyari, empathy. An adult who practices enryo doesn't just follow rules. They intuitively modulate their behavior, their voice, and their desires to ensure they are not a burden to others. This isn't about self-suppression or a lack of confidence. Rather, it is the ultimate expression of social agency, the power to consciously choose harmony over ego. In the West, we often struggle with the pendulum swing of parenting, oscillating between permissive indulgence and authoritarian control. We worry that if we are too close to our children, we will spoil them, or if we give them too much freedom, they will become wild. The Japanese model resolves this paradox by recognizing that true independence is not the opposite of connection, but the result of it. The security of the early Amae years provides the child with a secure base from which they can safely explore the world. When a child knows they have a place where they are unconditionally accepted, they don't need to engage in the attention-seeking behaviors or the defiant boundary testing that characterize so much of Western adolescence. The discipline they exhibit is intrinsic rather than extrinsic. In a reward and punishment system, a child's good behavior is dependent on the presence of a monitor. They behave when someone is watching or when a sticker is at stake. But in the Japanese system, the monitor is internalized. The child behaves because they have come to identify as a person of beauty, shitsuke, and as a guardian of the wa, harmony. This internal motivation is far more durable and sophisticated than any external consequence could ever be. It is the difference between a person who doesn't steal because they fear the police and a person who doesn't steal because they simply do not see themselves as a thief. As we look at the modern world, a world increasingly defined by digital distractions, rising rates of childhood anxiety, and a breakdown of communal ties, the lessons of this centuries-old philosophy feel more relevant than ever. The Japanese secret is not found in a specific set of rules or a particular cultural quirk, but in a profound alignment with the fundamental needs of the human brain. Every child, regardless of where they are born, requires deep attachment to feel safe, the space to struggle to feel competent, and meaningful responsibility to feel valued. We can begin to integrate these tools into our own lives tonight, not by trying to replicate Japanese culture, but by adopting the mindset of prevention, trust, and connection. It starts with the 10-second pause, that moment of Mimamoru, where we resist the urge to yell or intervene and instead observe what our child is capable of. It continues with the shift from punishing a bad behavior to identifying the missing skill, transforming our role from an adversary to a mentor. It is reinforced through the introduction of small, daily rituals that build the child's identity as a capable contributor to the family. These rituals, setting the table, folding laundry, or offering a ritualized thank you, are the shitsuke that attaches beauty to their daily lives. Ultimately, the goal of Japanese parenting is to raise a person who is at home in themselves and in the world. By prioritizing warmth first and structure second, by choosing to watch over rather than overpower, and by trusting in the child's innate desire for harmony, we move away from the exhausting cycle of reactive parenting. We stop being firefighters and start being architects. We realize that the toddler melting down on the train is not a problem to be solved, but a human being in the process of learning. When we meet that moment with the calm of a parent who knows that love is secure and that skills will come with time, we aren't just raising a well-behaved child. We are raising a resilient, empathetic, and self-governing adult. This is the enduring legacy of the Japanese approach, a system built one ritual, one moment, and one small act of trust at a time. It is a philosophy that reminds us that the greatest gift we can give our children is not a life free of struggle, but the internal tools and the unconditional love necessary to navigate that struggle with grace. As the world continues to change, these human truths remain a steady compass for any parent seeking to raise an emotionally intelligent and disciplined child in an often chaotic world.